The MCU finally continues in the cinema. What is Black Widow like? Did we deserve this film? Is it a fitting send-off for Scarlett Johansson in the MCU? If you want to find out my thoughts, join me after the intro. Hi, my name's Stu and welcome to another review video on Flying Wiener. I'm happy to say that we are continuing with the MCU not just on Disney Plus but also in the cinemas with actual films, which is great to see. Generally speaking, I was really pleased that this film is coming out just for the character and for Scarlett Johansson, because Black Widow has been there since nearly the start of the MCU and has been along for quite a lot of the important parts of the journey, yet it has taken so long for her to finally get a film. And that is actually one of the main things that did concern me going into this. I had the feeling that this is probably something along the lines of too little too late. So that's how I went in. I had mixed feelings also because spoilers for Avengers Endgame if you haven't seen that, but I don't know why you'd be here. If you are a Marvel or MCU fan, surely you've seen it if you're watching this review. Anyway, spoilers for Avengers Endgame. Natasha Romanoff, of course, dies in that film, which gives this film a really weird feeling. Now, it is set just after Captain America Civil War, so 5 years ago, just to place it somewhere. And we know what's going to happen to her. So the question does arise, why is this film necessary? What is the point of it? I feel that this film would have benefited a lot more if it had been released at that time, at or around that time. It would have been a lot better. It would have given us a lot more context for Black Widow, for her place in the story, and just the overall thing. Now it just feels like a weird flashback, because the story has progressed so much since Civil War, and it just gives this whole thing a strange aura. So I entirely blame Marvel for this. They obviously weren't confident enough in the character to give her a film of her own until now. It obviously took the likes of Wonder Woman to being released for them to say, okay, let's look into it. It's a real shame because, like I say, I think that is the film's biggest weak point, that it came out just so late, where it just doesn't fit in with what the story is doing right now. That being said, what is the film about? What is the plot of Black Widow? As per usual, without spoilers, it is giving us a lot of backstory on the character. What we are seeing is it's after Civil War, so if you don't remember, at the end of Civil War, at least from Natasha's perspective, she stopped Black Panther from pursuing Captain America. So she is being searched for because of this incident due to the Sokovia Accords, and we see her here, and she has a meet-up with her sister. This is not a big spoiler, this is introduced in the first few minutes of the film. She used to live in America for several years with two parents, both parents, and a sister. And so her sister went through the same program that she has been put through, or had been put through in early life, and they meet up. I won't discuss the details of how and why that happens, etc., but they meet up again after having not seen each other for decades. And they have mutual interests in this case, and they journey together. Now, as Black Widow's background, of course, is one in espionage, and she is introduced in the MCU as a spy. This is something that has really got a heavy influence on the film itself. So for the first half at least, if not 2/3, it really feels like a sort of Jason Bourne-esque. That's what it gave me really strong vibes of. Sort of espionage, thriller I'll call it, because the two sisters are trying to piece together this scheme that's going on, I'll call it, and trying to get to the goal, keeping it very, very generic with my expressions here, don't want to spoil it at all. And that is mainly what the film is about. So, as you can imagine, we don't have the typical superheroes here. I'll be honest, for the first half of the film or so, I was sitting there thinking to myself, I am kind of missing the superhuman characters. I'll be honest, I'm a sucker for them. I always enjoy that a lot more. That is mainly what I go to comics for. But I must say that by the end, I thought I sort of decided no, actually it was fine not having the likes of a Thor or Captain America or someone like that in the story. It was great to just have it centered on Black Widow. It actually feels, at least in how the film was made, etc., it does feel more aligned to the sort of Captain America franchise, particularly of course the Winter Soldier, where it's about intrigues and all this kind of thing, and the film felt like it went really well with that side of the MCU. So I really enjoyed that. Overall, I think it was great. The plot was fine. The plot was fine. There were certain elements in it which I didn't feel were quite so necessary. So particularly you had a lot being driven by just the thought of, okay, we need a big action scene here. You know, there needs to be something big happening because it's a comic book film. I'll be honest, I wasn't really too interested in them. I didn't really feel that they were so interesting, actually. So it's not that the action per se was bad or so. It's just that they didn't feel... This to me felt like a film that didn't need the big fights or big explosions or these kind of things. You know, they do happen, but yeah, they didn't really do much for me. I wasn't really too keen on that. I was very interested in the dynamic with the sister. That was great. And generally just us being introduced to Natasha Romanoff having just family members, relatives. That was quite interesting, seeing the interactions there as well. So the plot, generally speaking, is fine. I think that they did her character justice, that she now has just more to her background and just to her whole character. Really like that bit of the story, but like I say, it's just got this bittersweet taste because now they finally give her more background when she is already dead. So it's like, what was the big point? Acting wise, Scarlett Johansson, I like her as an actress. She does a great job here being the main character. I will say though that I thought she was kind of upstaged a bit by Florence Pugh, who plays her sister. I think that she just did a better job. I really liked her in Midsommar, which I did a review on. If you're interested in that, you can click a link up here to see that. And I just felt that she just did a slightly better job. But generally speaking, both of them really great. And the other person I would also mention, to me, was a standout character, is David Harbour. He plays the father to this family, so you're introduced to him within the first few minutes of the film as well, and I really enjoyed him just as a character and the acting as well. So those three together were really standout in my opinion. Particularly the dynamic within the family was quite interesting to see. There was just one or two moments where I felt was a bit silly, and that had to do with the humour in the film, because MCU films, naturally, as is widely known by now, I would expect, have a lot of humour in them. To me, it's sometimes hit and miss, so I generally speaking enjoy the films where they tone down the humour a bit more, where they don't rely so heavily on one-liners, etc. And this film, I would say, generally has toned down humour, which I felt was very fitting, because it wasn't a fun story in that sense. The ride is not a fun adventure, so it felt very fitting. But still, there were certain scenes where they just forcefully injected, and just to me it felt out of place. There's one dinner scene, for instance, and it's like, after, obviously, as you can imagine, after being reunited after such a long time, then just suddenly just sort of making fun of it being, haha, we're back together as a family, and then you have the typical jabs that family members have against each other. It just felt really weird in that scene, didn't fit very well. So here and there I felt that they could have toned it down even more. But other than that, the humour was fine. I enjoyed it quite a lot, and the dynamic in particular, as I said, I felt that particularly the father and the sister, so Florence Pugh's character and David Harbour's character, their chemistry together was brilliant. I really liked that. So they, to me, both of them really were the standout characters, and then of course you had Black Widow as well. Overall, I felt that it was a good film. I saw, just, I don't read reviews before I do mine. I will actually check them out afterwards though, because I am interested. Just wee snippets I picked up, people were, I felt, complaining about the film, saying, it's not so good, etc. I felt watching it, to me it's a good film. It's not the best one. I would probably, if I had to make a ranking of the MCU, I would put it probably somewhere around the middle, maybe sort of the just above average of all the films, something like that. It's somewhere in the centre, I would say. It's good, it's enjoyable, you've got great actors, the characters are very likeable, the action, like I say, in places I felt wasn't necessary, but it's fine. So in that sense, yeah, particularly if you like I say, this the more Captain America-esque sort of with intrigues and thriller side of the MCU, I think you should definitely enjoy this. My biggest issue with the film definitely is just the timing of it. Should have been released 5 years earlier, would have fit in perfectly just with the timeline and the story of the MCU. Now it's just in a weird place where it feels like they had to, and this is slightly spoilerish for the film, but I suppose you expected it anyway, but it feels like Marvel, just in order to make this film, they were looking for other reasons, not just for Black Widow, but it's the typical MCU thing where, okay, if we're making this film, we want to have some characters that we can use later on. And some parts of the film feel like that. It's like we're setting up characters just so that they can be used later on, which is a shame because I feel like it takes away from the focus which should be on Black Widow throughout. You know what's going to happen to Black Widow in Avengers Endgame, so yeah, it just feels like a bit of a waste, a bit too little too late, but I'm happy for the character to get her time in the spotlight finally. So those are my thoughts on Black Widow. What about yours? Have you seen the film? Are you planning to do so? What do you think about its place in the MCU? Are you disappointed, happy, whatever? All of these things down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like on it, share it around, that would help out the channel a lot. If you're interested in future review videos here on Flying Wiener, then definitely also subscribe to the channel. Currently, I'm watching Loki, and once that show wraps up, I'm of course going to talk about that here as well. So that will be the next MCU thing, which will be actually in just a few weeks' time. I haven't actually checked how many episodes there are, didn't want to spoil myself. So anyway, once that wraps up, you'll hear about it here. I'll thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.